Hello everybody. I'm going to look or arbitrary manner and an obstinate determination to enforce one's will. Children controlled by domineering parents, imperious implies a commanding nature or manner, often suggests arrogant assurance. So in some ways, it's almost like domineering is the arrogant side of dominance. Right? So someone could be a dominant and be domineering. There's people who are just domineering and don't know anything about power exchange. I think they wish they were in charge, or they're trying to make themselves be in charge. And it's not the same thing. I'm gonna need you guys to jump in with me today to have this conversation. Is domineering positive or negative? Has negative connotation as someone who's overly controlling, followed by aggressive, which suggests a readiness to attack, then pushing. Has negative connotation as someone who's overly controlling, followed by aggressive, which suggests a readiness to attack, then pushy for excessive. Has negative connotation as someone who's overly controlling, followed by aggressive, which suggests a readiness to attack, then pushy for excessive assertiveness, and finally forceful, carrying the most back. I'll be right there. There we go. Because while the temperature's not that high, the humidity's so high, I'm sweating just sitting here, and that's not a lot of fun. So, hello, Kushla. Hello, everyone. So that's kind of the dictionary definition. Now, I don't know if y'all have experiences with domineering people versus dominant people. Hi, Linda. We've talked about power exchange existing in so many places in all our different relationships. And I have had both experiences with people who were dominant in my vanilla world and who were domineering also. I've worked with, hey, Hurricane Master. So one of my earliest positive experiences with someone who was in charge, was a boss of me, right? So by definition, we know that that's a dynamic, right? A DS relationship, right? Like I was an employee, I was a new manager. It was a fine dining restaurant. I was super excited to be there. And this manager, that's the general manager of the restaurant, right? So all the managers worked for him. He was really good at what he did, and he was really a great teacher and was patient and went above and beyond to help teach me, because I was very young and very new, right? So we would have sit downs where he would explain how things work, help teach me, because I was very young and very new, right? So we would have sit downs where he would explain how things worked, and she was a lot like that, and she was hard to be around. She was hard to want to work with, but handling employees, handling how to counsel or deal with employees that you have issues with can be challenging, especially when you're new. There was so much about being a restaurant manager that was like new to me, right? But he sat down with me and really walked through, like, this is how we do it. This is how you write up someone. This is how you counsel them. This will be what it'll look like over time. They will either take the advice of the first counseling and straighten up, or they won't. And then so many times, and that's how a person you end up being able to terminate someone legally and responsibly, ethically and morally, right? If you give someone every opportunity to correct their behavior and do what you ask them to do, and then they don't do that, then you're well within your bounds to like tell them that clearly that's not the place for them. I had no idea how to do any of that stuff, and so he walked me through that. That was advice and teaching that held me in good stead. And he was patient and he was tolerant, and so he was a good leader. We've talked earlier in this week about the difference between like being a boss and being a leader. and how that applies to being a dominant. And I think that all of that's really, really true. I am going to pull out some of the documents that we've been looking at, because I think a lot of the stuff we've been talking about around dominance in general lends themselves to this conversation. There it is. This is the stuff we've been talking about all week, right? Dominance and submission. So for instance, one of the things that we didn't really go over in the research that I had done earlier is something called positive dominance. Have you ever been around a person that was just confident in what they were doing and gave you direction in a firm yet kind way? It probably felt comforting, calming, like they knew what they were doing. It probably fostered respect and trust in you. Whomever is being submissive is still in control. So in my situation, like, I was not in control. I would have been silly to not sit and take the advice of this like older, wiser, more experienced manager. But at the end of the day, it was my decision to sit and continue to work there and continue to learn there. And I could have withdrawn that agreement at any point. But I simply chose to give the power and decision making over to my boss because I trusted and respected that they knew best and that they had my best interest in heart as well. So not only did I feel like, you can't hear me. I don't know what to do about that. Let's see. I don't know if that helps. Okay, good. Thank you. I trusted that not only did they have the best interest of the restaurant in mind, because as a general manager, I trusted that not only did they have the best interest of the restaurant in mind, because as a general manager, that's your job, right? But I felt dominance and submission in the lifestyle. I think our ability on the S side of the slash to want to follow the lead of a dominance is that it's decidedly absent of domineering qualities, right? You all have heard me talk about my history as a person in recovery who needs to be in recovery, etc. I don't know that everyone responds this way, but I certainly, if you tell me something, if you tell me I have to do something, then it's the last thing I want to do. If you try to make me do something, I will resist, even if it's the thing I most need to do. It's just how I'm wired. And so I responded well to the encouragement to learn, the encouragement to, the encouragement to take the lessons that were being offered to me. But because they were being offered, like it said here, it was direction that I was being given in a firm yet kind way. Like they took the time offered, like it said here, it was direction that I was being given in a firm yet kind way. Like they took the time to stop me from the rabbit hole I was just about to go down. So I think that I more readily take advice or take direction from someone who knows what they're talking about and is patient and kind. I don't do that well. And with short-temperedness, I don't do well with impatience. I don't learn that well in that environment. And I think that not everyone has the innate in that environment. And I think that not everyone has the innate ability to be. I think that not everyone has the innate ability to do it, and then ultimately they can teach it, and then they really know it. Then they really can it, and then they really know it. Then they really can. I don't know. Let me know if that's any better. I turned off Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, so we'll see if that's any better. So patience and kindness and tolerance for the learning process, right? And between Dominance and submissives, and I'm lagging on TikTok. Is it not any better yet? I don't know why. I don't know how to make it better. I did the two things I know how to do. Is it still lagging? Can someone tell me if it's still lagging so I know if I have to do something about this? Not now. Okay, hopefully not now. It got way better. Okay, great, thank you. So, and as I'm thinking about the learning part, right? Submissives sometimes have to teach their dominance. When submissives know more in some areas, and I know very, very experienced submissives who know a lot and who've been around for a long time, and they have things to offer, right? And at the same time, I think all of us can have impatience when we're trying to teach somebody something. And I do think, as I'm thinking about it, the degree of patience that we have is a combination of what's going on inside of us, and I think our connection to the other person. I know for me, I understand a lot about the patience required to teach somebody something. I understand that, like, just because I have a conversation with you about something and I feel like I've really explained it, next time you still may not get it. And then I may have to explain it again, or I may have to find some other words how to explain it in order to learn, in order for another person to learn. But I find that my patience is a little bit eroded directly to the degree that I really like somebody and I really feel good about them. Like when I've been, especially like when I've even been in work situations and I've been the boss, I'm more patient with people that I like, and it's not a quality I'm thrilled to admit to you, but goodness knows I've admitted a lot of things to you guys in the last 3.5 weeks. But it's true. It's something for me to work on, because I believe that everyone is deserving of the same degree of patience and tolerance and kindness in the learning process as anybody else. And I also agree that everyone's different, right? So some people catch on to things quick, and those people are easier to teach because it goes faster, right? And then some people take a really long time. Even for instance in rope, in beginner rope classes, we'll do rope classes where we're on single and double columns. You guys can shout out if you have no idea what I'm talking about, but there are some people, myself included, for whom rope is easy. And by easy, I mean intuitive, right? Like I've done rope classes where the class has just been like basic skills, single and double column, and I learned it kind of easy, almost to the point of it being really boring. And I've never been in a class where it's gone on to another. I did take a class once that was specifically just someone coming in and almost like in a rope share way, teaching everybody a harness that they knew. And the harness was like a complete end into itself. It had its own thing. There were all of the pieces and whatever that you did about it. When you were done, you had a chest harness. That was great. I loved that. I don't like learning things when they don't have a purpose, or doing things when they don't have a purpose, right? Like I love to ride bikes, but I don't like to just ride a bike around the neighborhood for the purposes of riding around in circles. I like to take a bicycle and go somewhere. I like to use it for transportation. I like it to have a purpose. And so a lot of my learning feels like that. Yeah, it is easier to listen when you want to learn. And everyone does learn at different levels and at different paces. And oh, you guys are going to do some self-ties together. I love that. We're about to start a 6-week rope sort of intensive class starting this Thursday, where we're going to go from self-tying all the way to partial suspension in 6 weeks time. And I didn't get to do it last time because I was recovering from surgery and I wasn't able to do it physically. I wasn't able to be in the class and do it. And so now I'm going to be in the class and doing it. And I'm really excited to be able to sort of put some solid rope skills underneath me. But the point of this was, it came easy to me. And I didn't necessarily have a lot of patience for the class and for wanting to do it. But the downside is I walk away from it. I say to myself, oh, I can do that. And then I don't do it for a while. And then I go back to it and I have to be reminded how to do it again. Then I'm reminded, then it's easy. And it's like a loop with me. But on the other hand, I've been in the same kind of rope classes and watch people so struggle, super, super struggle, just even to be able to tie a single column or a double column, something that's easy for me. And it would be not very nice of me if I were to treat those people like, oh, what's the matter? You don't get it? Like if I were to make somebody feel less than because they didn't get it quickly, or when they ask to be shown again and again, because every time they try it, they can't quite get it right, so they ask you to show them again. That's an opportunity to either be patient or demonstrate your impatience, and that's a place where I've been challenging. So from a learning standpoint, I think we can be domineering when we're being impatient. We're trying to make somebody do something faster than they can do it, or at a higher level and they're able to do it, and it's like we're trying to impose our will or our way even in that situation. And there isn't necessarily, like the DS in the moment is you're the one with more skill and ability and the person in the class has less skill and ability, right? Because we've talked about these dynamic pieces existing everywhere, right? Like the person in the class who knows more is more dominant to the person in the class who knows less. And the teacher hopefully knows more than that and they're dominant to the whole class. Like we can break down power exchange across a lot of lines. So again, we're talking about the difference between dominant and domineering. So we just went over some instructions about that. So in some ways, we could go through this list that we had yesterday of what are the qualities of a good dom and come right up with what's the opposite of that, right? So a good dom is respectful, especially when in public. I really liked that yesterday. I really think that no matter what happens between a dom and a sub, even if there's like humiliation in play that happens, unless you've really navigated and negotiated being in public, I think that it's important to be respectful in public. You know, like Joshua, we go out and he'll have one of his slaves on a leash and we'll walk around. But there's never any disrespect. There's never anything other than, you know, the grace and dignity that we all walk down the street with together. And it's fun and we get looks. People look at us sideways. But there's always a great deal of respect shown. And so that's really important. So Hurricane, I thought we would look at what the opposite is, right? So in a domineering person, domineering people are not very respectful. That's one of the ways that you can tell that somebody's being domineering, even if they say they're dominant. A domineering quality is to be disrespectful. And so that's a dead giveaway. Having a firm grasp of control and what it means, right? We were talking about doms that are possessed of their own passions, priorities, goals, etc., and that they're actively working towards them in sort of a transparency way. With my experience with people who are domineering is that whatever may be true with them on these fronts, you don't get to see that. They're too busy just trying to tell you what you should be doing, how it should be done. And so that's one way that you can tell the difference. If the person is leading with their own integrity, like their own process, but they're trying to tell someone else like what their process should be, it's a sign of domineering and not domination. Keeping promises. I don't know that domineering people don't, necessarily don't keep promises, but I do feel like domineering people don't see the discrepancy between like what they say and what they do. Like I've been there was a sense of domineering in my childhood, in the way I was raised and the way adults raised children back then. Children should be seen and not heard. Don't do as I do as I say. Those were some of the things that adults said to kids when I came up, right? There's almost a domineering quality to that kind of parenting, where as a parent, you don't feel like a child is deserving of, like, let's say, the same kind of respect that you show another adult. And I think that kids are deserving. Now, I have to say, I don't have any children of my own, so I always tread lightly on parenting comments that I make, but I really do believe that children are just little people and are equally deserving of respect, even though the parent-child relationship is for sure a dynamic, is for sure a power exchange. I still think that little people are deserving of respect. And I think that disrespecting a child is a domineering way to parent. Doms that don't care about their subs, doms that speak down on their subs. Yes, respect regardless of age. Being open to criticism. Being open to criticism or taking advice, not being open to criticism and not taking advice very well, is a dead giveaway that we're dealing with someone who is domineering as opposed to being dominant. It's almost like we can define bad doms as being domineering in a way. It's like it could be a way to like shorthand that, right? To understand that someone who's not really that good at being dominant, in the way we mean it, in all the ways we've talked about it in the last 2 days, that a relationship is solid, that the dominant is self-possessed, self-assured, patient, kind, shows respect to their submissive. When all of that stuff is not there, we can just as easily say domineering as we say bad dom, I think. Kindness, I think we covered that. I think kindness is a dead giveaway. I've just been talking about that a domineering person doesn't hold kindness as a value. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't be. It doesn't mean that a domineering person is not kind. But in some ways, kindness ends up being wielded like a weapon. Domineering people, to me in general, take the qualities that the rest of us use in good faith and wield them as weapons to try and get their agenda across. They try to get what they want, even if it's at the expense of other people. And I think that, domineering, some of them can't use softness and kindness, right? But I do think that if I'm not understanding what you're saying there, right, like, you can use kindness and softness, right, as a way to reel somebody in right before you beat them over the head with whatever point it is you're trying to get across. There's a section in one of my books that talks about how when I'm in a more domineering space, I can alternately try to get my way by being overbearing or by being super kind or by, there's various ways of behaving. But if the underlying intention or motive is to get your way, is to get your point across, is to be right, then you're domineering way more than you are being dominant. And yes, it does go through, submissives can do the same thing. Anybody can be domineering. And that's an interesting point to make, right? Like, because I think the way we would use the word in terms of submissive is not domineering so much as overbearing. I think overbearing is the word that comes to mind for me when someone is being domineering from the S side of the slash, or from that S side of any dynamic, whether it's a child, parent, boss, employee dynamic, etc. And so, yes, love bombing can go into that too. Yeah, any behavior that has an agenda, that has a motive behind it, is, I think, a clue as to what somebody's really trying to get at. I've seen people use kindness as a lure to catch the other person off guard. Exactly. And again, to me, all that's about is trying to get your way. And the phrase that I have for this from my backlog of phrases in my life, in my world, is I'd rather be right than happy. Somebody told me years ago, you can't be right and happy, right? So sometimes I have to give up being right if I want to have good relationships, if I want to have peace, if I want to be happy, right? I'm not always going to be right. And that means even if I am right, even if in the situation I know the most, or I have the most informed decision, or the most informed information, or whatever, if I'm speaking with someone who can't hear it, who can't have it, who's convinced that something else is the right way, if I jump into trying to force my way into having my viewpoint heard, or force my way into making sure that the other person knows that their viewpoint is not as correct as mine, then I'm more caught up in being right than being happy. And then even if I am right, what was the benefit of it? What was the benefit of it if I've distanced myself from someone, if I've created hardship for someone by how they feel, or their inability? Maybe they would want to learn what I have to share, but it's much harder to do when I am when I'm being blustery, and I'm being overbearing, and I'm being I'm being domineering. I went through my ex dynamic with a sub that was domineering and topping from the bottoming. Yeah, topping from the bottom. That's definitely a way of being domineering, is to top from the bottom. I really don't like topping from the bottom. So I understand the other side of the slash and how it feels, right? Well, that's something that when we teach, everything we teach from both sides. And we don't necessarily, we don't teach modalities in terms of power exchange. We teach them in terms of energy exchange, right? Topping and bottoming. But nobody gets to come into our space and be like, oh, I'm exclusively going to bottom, I'm not going to top. Like, it doesn't work that way. Like, you're here to learn skills, and the degree to which you can have compassion for the other side of any of those slashes, whether it's power exchange or energy exchange, is directly proportional to how much you understand whatever it is you're talking about doing. So whatever modality, let's say we're talking about, what do we call it? The mop thing, referring to, flogging. We call it mop, whatever. Like when we teach the class, like when I teach that class tomorrow, actually Josh is going to be here tomorrow, and I'm going to be teaching flogging, spicy mops. Yes, thank you. So while we're learning how to do spicy mops, both people have to pick up the implement. Both people have to learn what to do with it. Both people have to learn what it feels like to be on the receiving end of it. There's someone downstairs in the class right now who's relatively new to us, and they started after they've been to a few of our events recently, and they said something to me like, what do you mean, like, I have to bottom for that? We were doing an impact class. I was teaching an impact class at Oculus, and I looked at them and I said, you absolutely have to be on the receiving end. And they looked all askance. I said, I don't care how you want to be in the majority of your time, but I personally, I will never allow someone to use an implement on me that they don't know what it feels like on themselves. And I give everyone permission to hold that same viewpoint. And the only way that you can know that is if you know what it means, you know what it feels like, you know how to do it, right? If you don't know, like, let's say you're relatively new, or you've been around for a while and you're on the submissive side or the bottom side, and you don't understand where the target areas are on the body. You don't know what's safe and what's not safe. You can be like hit all in your lower back. You can be wrapped. And think that however it feels is just supposed to be the way that it is, or it's just supposed to be normal. And it's not. It doesn't have to be that way. But you only get to speak up for yourself if you know what you're speaking up for. If you know that if you know where the danger zones are, if you sat with a class and place the red stickers on the no-go zones, absolutely. There's a million ways to do it. But there are definite no-go zones. Like don't hit the bone right here on my neck and anywhere above makes me crazy. Wrapping makes me crazy. Watching someone hit someone in the soft tissue area will make me step right in as DM in any situation and stop. Because if someone's hitting someone in the where the soft tissue area is, they clearly to me don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're doing. And if you as a bottom don't know that, then you're endangered to being hurt or harmed because you don't know enough about it. So yes, no kidney area, exactly right. So that's why we teach the classes that we teach, so that everyone has to engage in both sides. So that's part of that. I don't know. I think I need a light bulb. I don't know where that rabbit hole came from. And so yes. So what are we talking about? Kindness. Selflessness. Now, selflessness is one of those qualities that I have seen used. Thanks, Master Hurricane. Thanks for my light bulb. Kindness is one of those tools I've seen used genuinely, or selflessness. That's what we're talking about, selflessness. Selflessness has also been used in an overbearing way. And think of that in terms of the after all I've done kind of a thing, right? When somebody runs around, and I was guilty of this in my early 20s, while I still had raging codependency issues, way bigger than any of my other issues. I literally would run around doing everything for everyone, regardless of whether or not they wanted me to, and then when I wasn't appreciated, I would feel a certain kind of way about it. And I would say to people, I would give people like the after all I've done routine. And then fortunately, towards my betterment, one day I had the small voice that said, hey, psst, who asked you? Stopped me dead in my tracks. And I realized that me feeling a certain kind of way because you didn't appreciate something I did when you didn't even ask me to do it in the first place is on me and isn't on anyone else. Yes, Missy, people pleasing is a hard habit to break. And I engaged in it with such arrogance. I was so domineering in those days. And I didn't see it as people pleasing. When people would talk about people pleasing, I saw that as some sort of like sniveling, caring about what everybody thought about you, worrying about that. And that's not how I related to what I was actually doing, which was a very sick form of people pleasing. I thought I was really helping people. I thought I was really like making the world a better place, whether it was at work or at home or whatever. And then I didn't understand why people just didn't appreciate me and appreciate, like, if you knew how hard I was working, if you knew all the stuff I was doing, you would super appreciate me. So that was me being in a very domineering sort of way in my life. Selflessness. So the selflessness, how selflessness connects to what I'm saying is, in my own mind, when I was busy doing all of this stuff, I did it from the standpoint of selflessness. I thought I was putting my needs aside. I was making all the time and energy in the world to take care of you and take care of things and do the right thing by people. I was using selflessness to sort of hide behind my pushy, domineering, arrogant behavior. So that's what I mean about selflessness being used in a way as justification for domineering behavior. Not actual selflessness, but a story of selflessness that a domineering person tells themselves and anyone else around who will listen. So thank you for explaining. It makes sense. How did you realize and navigate that? I literally had I have a connection to the God of my understanding, a power in the universe that's greater than me. And there have been times when that power has literally just stepped in and said, hit me right up in the back of the head and said, hey, stupid, look at this. And that was one of those moments. I got one of those moments that said, who asked you? You're running around here, storming around, so mad at everybody for all the things you've done and nobody asked you. Like, nobody has to thank you for something they didn't want you to do in the first place. Yeah, it was an aha moment, Master Hurricane. That's exactly what it was. And did I stop doing it right away? No, but it stands as a pivotal moment for me where I began to relate to myself ever so slightly differently. It was the beginning of when I talk about that period of my life, I refer to it as having turned 18 and fallen into a very dark, deep hole. I was in a very dark, deep hole. Yes, Missy, it's exhausting and it wastes a lot of energy. And the wasting of the energy comes from the fact that nobody asked. Nobody wanted me to do the stuff that I was doing. I think people wished that I would just sit down and shut up. But I was so caught up in what I believed. And I was all of the things we talked about in Domineering. I was arrogant. I was pushy. I wasn't very nice to people about it. But yeah, like people inserting themselves in places that wasn't asked for. Exactly. It's the same thing. It's the same kind of thing. And especially when there's that edge of entitlement. I think Domineering has an edge of entitlement about it, right? Like, I'm this way because I'm entitled, or because I am smart enough, good enough, know better, whatever it is you tell yourself about why you justify being arrogant and pushy with people. And yeah, it's hard to admit being egotistical and entitled. Yeah, I have a lot of time under my belt now, understanding myself from a very long time ago. So it's not as hard for me to talk about it. Although, listen, I never in my wildest dreams imagined that I would sit here on TikTok and Instagram and talk for an hour every day at these very deep core levels about things. But here I am all the same. So that moment of clarity about, hey, but here I am all the same. So that moment of clarity about, hey, who asked you? Like, sit down and shut up, basically, was one of the beginning steps that ultimately became the ladder that let me climb out of the hole that I was in. I was in a very deep hole. I ended up with a kind of a therapist / counselor person who helped me understand codependency and how I was doing what I was doing with it, how it was running my life. And I had a few moments, hard, knocked upside the head moments that helped me get from where I was to that first. We've talked about leveling up in these last 3 weeks, about, doing a lot of work on oneself and then getting to the place where you level up. And sometimes people come with you and sometimes they don't, right? Sometimes people are more interested in staying where you just were than they are in coming up with you. And so you have to leave people behind. So my beginning out of that deep hole was in some of these moments of clarity that came to me, that punched holes in my arrogance and punched holes in my denial and punched holes in my my self-righteousness. I lived in a lot of self-righteousness, which is that sort of being right that keeps us from being happy. But on the flip side, it's amazing to realize that and grow from that space. Absolutely. I have to stay on the positive side. I mean, I don't, for what it's worth, I turned 60 in June, and there are things that I still grapple with that I can give myself a bad time about, especially because the people that I work with and the people that I try to help as a result of all the work that I've done are so much younger than me. So my joy is feeling like if my experience can cut time off of that for anyone, I feel really good about it. Because there are times when I feel like, wow, am I just getting to whatever it is now? of course, the alternative is it beats not doing it. It beats not getting to it. It beats never growing or never changing, right? And so I just have to give myself grace. There's that word again. To learn at whatever pace I'm learning at. You know, single columns and double columns come easy to me, but sometimes it's interpersonal stuff, sometimes it's emotional stuff is hard for me. It's really hard. And I've been dealing a lot of that. Like, you all have helped me so much. You have no idea how much help you've all given me by being present for me and holding space for me while I've processed. It's been super incredible. And I'm grateful beyond words. So let's see. What else? Communication. Domineering people. Thank you, Hurricane, for my hugs. And Sassafras, I'm glad. If this is helping in any way, I'm so grateful. I really, really love it. Thank you, Trigger, for my consensual hug. Yes, I love being hugged. You all can hug me anytime. And come to New York City. All of you, come to New York City and look me up and come visit. I'd love to meet all of you in person. I've already gotten to meet a couple of you in person, and it's incredible. One of you is downstairs in the intensive right now. Amazing. And so communication is another item by which we can tell the difference between dominance and domineering, right? Like communication style. It says this is the ability to talk openly and honestly about what's in your heart and mind, your opinions and beliefs, your needs and wants, your responses, reactions, basically to talk about everything. Domineering people only use certain parts of communication, right? They won't necessarily talk about what's in their hearts and in their minds, but they'll talk about their opinions and their beliefs, especially when they feel like their opinions and beliefs that you should have. They won't necessarily talk about their needs and wants, but they'll talk about yours. I think a lot of the thing about domineering people or coming from a domineering place is being more other focused. A person, I feel like, who's domineering is more focused on what they think other people should be doing. And not so much, I think people who are humble, people who are good at being dominants or submissives are able to keep their reflections to I statements. I speak about what is true for me. And I don't, sorry, I'm trying to get that thing. Yes, I do have Sassafras, there are a lot of sirens here. Sorry, I'm distracted by some of your comments. I'm in New York City. I'm in New York City proper. Yes, it's loud here. Is there a list? Listen, Kushley, you guys, I'm happy you're coming. DM me off of here. DM me on Instagram, and we can get you all hooked up with places to stay and all of that. So, let us know when you're going to be here. And that's true for anybody. Listen, I have a big heart, and I'm, if I can put you up, I will. If I can help you take you around the city, I will. Just to, just to have you come and be here. Like, come to one of our events. It'd be great to see you all. So the way of communicating is different. It's a telltale sign between someone who's dominant, someone who's a leader, versus someone who's domineering, who's pushy, who's a manager. We talked about the difference between leading and managing, right? Like, who's a boss. Managing is not necessarily so negative to me, but being a boss is kind of a way of, because being bossy is sort of part of being domineering, I think. Humility. That's a quality that I think is distinctly lacking for people who are domineering. And that's on both sides of the slash. I think that domineering or overbearing submissives lack humility to the same degree that domineering dominants lack humility. I think a lack of humility is a telltale sign of this particular quality or trait. And so that's a good way. I don't know. And I think what's the point of this? What's the point of understanding the difference between dominance and domineering? I think it's to understand where we're coming from and to know how to navigate the relationships we want to have in our lives. When I was in more active codependency, when I was not in a place of humility, I was also more prey to people who were the same way. I was also prey to people who didn't want to treat me with respect, and didn't speak kindly, because I was more vulnerable to those things. I'm vulnerable in a like I left myself open for being treated like that, because I was caught up in trying to be right. And so when I'm coming from a more humble place, when I have more humility and I have a little bit more right-sizedness about myself, I also become a little less tolerant of being treated badly. And I'm also, because I'm able to step away from people who are being even like how I was, right? People who are being aggressive, and I can just, I don't have to make you wrong. I just have to put some space. It's the solar system. I've told you guys about the solar system, right? I know I've talked about it here. Also, so you can identify domineering people and decide how much of your time they're allowed to have. Missy, that's exactly what I'm talking about. To the degree to which I come out from behind my overbearing, domineering, aggressive ways is the degree to which I can determine how much of it I don't want to have in my life, in the way of how it shows up as other people. So, a lot of the work that we do and we've been doing has to do with self-awareness, the introspection, and self-value, right? One of the things that has been harder for me, that's been more recent for me, is to really understand, embrace, hold my value. It's hard to come to the point of realizing that it's actually happening to you. That's true. Bye, Champ Frog. We'll see you. Have a good day. Especially with, I think you're talking about, I had to do a lot of self-work and healing, right? To get out from behind those kinds of relationships. Hurricane, I totally get that. But to the degree to which I do that work with myself, the degree to which I allow myself the space to grow and, permission to have made mistakes and to grow and become better, I don't have to take behavior from people that I used to feel like I had to tolerate. And that's kind of how that boils down. So Missy says, unfortunately, there is no rewind button in life. We have to realize our time is precious. Yes, and yes. One of the phrases that I've heard recently is that there's nobody coming to rescue you, right? There's nobody coming to rescue me. And I had to sit with that phrase for a while before I really understood what it meant. It sounded like kind of flip at first, but as I've been sitting with it, literally, in the last month or two, there's nobody, when I'm not feeling good about something, when I'm not in a good emotional place or whatever, there is a part of me that spins fantasies about things that would be being rescued. And I didn't know that. My current charge right now, my current personal challenge to myself is to start to really investigate the motives behind everything I think and do and feel and say. What is behind the things that I think, the feelings that I'm having, the words that I say, the thoughts that I obsess about? What's behind them? What's the motivation for me? And because I've become aware of the fact that no matter how much peeling of the onion I've done, there's another whole layer and level of peeling away that I think that I can stand to do right now, and it's coming to me in the form of understanding my motives. If I'm feeling bad, why am I feeling bad? What is it about whatever's happening that's making me feel bad? And I've also heard over the years and believe that nothing can actually make me feel bad. I can only be issued invitations to feel bad. It's up to me whether or not I feel bad, right? I have control at the end of the day over how I feel, over whether or not I decide to take up, somebody can say something even mean to me. Somebody can say something undermining or whatever. I only feel bad about it if I agree to feel bad about it. If I don't, then I actually don't have to. I can, and there's something about that way of looking at it that was really helpful to me when I first learned it, which was to internally say, when I hear somebody sort of entreating me to feel bad about myself, I can mentally, internally say, thanks for the invitation. I think I'll pass, right? I don't have to feel bad about myself if I don't want to, right? I can only feel bad with my own permission. Let's see, trying to be more mindful so I can figure out how to regulate my emotions. Really, exactly. Like, I've done so much work. Like, when I found out about CPTSD, I want to say 4 years ago, I had always related to PTSD symptoms, but never had I didn't have a qualifying event. Like, all the things that I hadn't gone to war, I hadn't seen anybody be killed, like all the things that qualify people to get PTSD as a diagnosis, I didn't have. And then I was on the internet just scrolling around one day and saw a woman talking about something called CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And that came, like, that resonated like in such a big way. Let's see. Oh, okay. Wait. I lost you guys on my thing here. So anyway, sorry, TikTok. I'll have to go to the big screen. I'll have to lean in. Yeah. So it's hard to get to that point. She scrolled out. Yes, I scrolled out of the messages. I can't be that. Yeah, I don't like her for me. Exactly. It's like, I started doing a lot of work. I took a deep dive. I got a book. If you've never heard me say this book before, it's called CPTSD From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. Game-changing book for me, life-changing book for me. There's a lot of books out there about CPTSD or trauma that have to do, like, The Body Keeps the Score, and the Tiger. Like, there's a lot of people. Yes, thank you. Thanks. From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. Thank you, Master Hurricane, for putting that in the chat. That was a workbook for me. That book has helped me through so much. Absolutely. It helped me understand fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, which you hear people talk about now. Essentially, that's the more fleshed out version of fight or flight. So fight or flight, freeze or fawn. And then, but in a way that I could get a hold of it and I could see myself in it. And then in the book are very specific suggestions about how to work through it, how to get out from behind it. Like when I go into, because my two responses are flight and fawn. I either want to run away or I go into overdrive trying to make everybody and everything happy so that I don't have to feel, I don't have to feel threatened. So those are the two ways that I respond to being triggered. And I didn't understand emotional flashbacks when I heard about them in a PTSD way was being on the battlefield, being whisked away in time. And what I learned is that an emotional flashback doesn't have any change in the look of the here and now. I've just been emotionally whisked away to some other place that's not here and now. And so that was a big rabbit hole that we just went down. I looked up at the clock. It's already 12:56. So I appreciate all of you for being here. I appreciate all of you for your patience with me as I sort of went through this hour solo. Master Joshua will be here with you guys tomorrow talking about the difference between submission and people pleasing. And so, you know,